This is part two of the Victorian Era lecture. By the end of the century, literacy was almost universal because of the laws that were passed requiring kids to go to school. And so the technological advances allowed more publications to be printed and sent to the masses. And so that caused this explosion of things to read. And so newspapers, periodicals, and books were very, very popular. And novels and short film were published in serial form. So they published little bits, little chapters at a time. And the reading public expected literature to illuminate social problems. So the newspaper, the periodical, the short story, all these things were seen as a vehicle to bring about change and reform. So the novel was the dominant form of literature in the Victorian era. And Victorian novelists seek to represent a large and comprehensive social world with a variety of classes. And they're really realistic. And so these novelists, such as Charlotte Bronte and her sister and Oscar Wilde's plays, all of these works were part of this movement to show life how it is. And the major theme is the place of the individual in society, or the aspiration of the hero or heroine for love or social position. So think about the hero journey and what that would mean in a Victorian novel. And so for the first time, women were major writers, like the Brontes, Elizabeth Gaskell, and George Eliot, which was the pen name for Mary Ann Evans. So when you see George Eliot, it's really Mary Ann Evans. It's a woman writer. And the Victorian novel was a principal form of education. And out of the novel, Victorian poetry grew. And so poets sought new ways of telling stories in verse. And all of the Victorian poets showed a strong influence of the Romantics, but they didn't sustain that power of imagination as the Romantics did. And the dramatic monologue was seen as the great achievement of Victorian poetry. So the idea of creating a lyric poem in the voice of a speaker, ironically distinct from the poet, is the great achievement here. And so we have read a couple of these dramatic monologues in class from the Victorian period. These poems were pictorial. Poets used detail to construct visual images that represent the emotion or situation the poem concerns. And also in these works, you'll see a conflict between the private poetic self and the public social role. And Victorian drama, huge during this time period. The theater was flourishing and popular during this time period, and it influenced other genres. And George Bernard Shaw and Oscar Wilde transformed theater with their comedy. So the importance of being earnest was hilarious. It was revolutionary for the time. They transformed the industry. Some novelists from the Victorian period are here. We read some of these in class. And some of the poets. We read most of these in class. And just a few images from the Victorian time period, so you can kind of see what they wore and what they did. It's kind of fun. And here are the sources. VictorianWeb.org is a fabulous resource for you if you want to find some primary sources or great information about the Victorian time period. I got most of my information from there. Thanks for tuning in.